Good morning, my friends. It occurred to me that it's been a while since I recorded a video outdoors, and so this morning we're here in the beauty of God's creation, and you can hear the birds and you can hear the bugs and the bees, and if you listen closely you can also hear the gentle hum of the leaf blower, for that too is a part of our urban life, isn't it? This morning I want to tell you, well, I have a couple of stories for you. Seems there was a man who lived in an old house not too far off the banks of a river, and as would happen, a storm comes through and the dam upstream starts to crumble. So as the waters start to come into his yard, a Jeep drives up, and there's a police officer in there and says, "Come with me and I'll take you to safety." And the house owner says, "No, I believe in God, I trust in God, God will save me." And so the Jeep drives away. The waters continue to rise, and up comes a National Guardsman in a boat and calls to the man, who by now is up to his waist in water, and says, "Come with me and I will save you." And the man says, "Nope, I believe in God, I trust in God, I know God will save me." And so the guardsmen and the boat leave. Finally, the waters continue to rise to such a level that the man now has to be up on the roof of his house. And a helicopter comes by, and it's the Coast Guard. And they say to him, "We'll drop a line, come with us and we'll save you." And the man says, "No, I believe in God, I trust in God, and God will save me." So the helicopter flies away, and you probably have guessed what's coming. The waters continue to rise and the man drowns. And he gets to the gates of heaven, and he talks to St. Peter at the gates, and he demands to see God because he needs to speak with him urgently. And St. Peter says, "Okay." And so the man is literally brought into the presence of God, and he accuses him, and he says, "God, I don't understand. I trusted in you, I believed in you, I knew you would save me, and yet you let me die." And the man says to him, "My beloved child, I sent you a Jeep, I sent you a boat, I sent you a helicopter. What more did you need?" Okay, it's an old story, and obviously I didn't make it up. You've heard it before. It's a little bit cute. Hold that one for just a moment, because I'm going to tell you another story too. You might have heard this one as well. This woman is going through her life, and she knows that the true path to happiness for her is just to have all the money in the world that she needs. And so she decides, "God, just let me win the lottery and everything will be great." And she prays fervently day and night, "Lord, let me win the lottery. Lord, let me win the lottery." And yet, every time the lottery is drawn, she doesn't win. And she gets despondent, and she finally decides, maybe God hates me. Maybe there's something I need to do. And she rails at God, and she says, "God, why won't you let me win the lottery? What is keeping me from winning the lottery?" And then a stillness comes across the land, and a voice from heaven rings out, and it says, "Help me out. Buy a ticket." I know. Kind of a groaner, right? Those are probably what some my children would call dad jokes. And I tell them to you this morning for a purpose, for a reason. Think about the first story, if you will. Think about the man watching the flood waters rise, and think about the final explanation that he gets from God. God says, "I sent you a Jeep, and I sent you a boat, and I sent you a helicopter." God, my friends, is persistent. We worship a persistent God, a God who doesn't leave us alone, who doesn't let us be cast adrift. No, we worship a God who shows up, a God who suits up and is right here with us. That God was in that Jeep and in that boat and in that helicopter. And I assure you, that God is in your lives today in every possible way. Every time you feel that tap on your shoulder, that's the Spirit. That's God nudging you and encouraging you to take the step that God knows is the right step for you. We tend to rail against God when things don't go the way we want them to do, when we don't, in fact, win the lottery. Show of hands, how many people have prayed to win the lottery? Yeah, I had a feeling that might be the case. That's not how it works, my friends. Instead, God's persistence to us is something that we need to recognize. The man in the flood didn't see it, refused to see it, quite frankly. It was made very apparent to him, but for whatever reason, he had those blinders on and couldn't see God's persistent call in his life. Can we? Can we stop and get out of our own way long enough that we might actually begin to see the persistence of God in each of our lives? To know that God does indeed have a plan for us and has been patiently, so patiently waiting for us to start to recognize some of those signs, some of that persistence that God has been doing for us. And when we can finally start to see God's persistence and to recognize that maybe, just maybe, God is active in our lives and has a plan for us, the next step for us is to be willing to act. For we can't be like the woman who said, "Lord, let me win the lottery," and never bought a ticket. Somebody once said, "Don't pray for God to move your feet if you're not willing to move them with him." Right? You can't ask God to walk beside you if you're not willing to take a step. So we need to be attuned to God's persistence, even in this especially in this COVID world that we're living in right now. Where is God acting in your life? What doors is God opening that you might be walking right by and not even seeing the good thing that is for you on the other side? Where are we ignoring God's call? Where are we hitting the cosmic snooze button on the alarm clock that's going off of God telling us what we could be? Notice I didn't say should be, I said could be. For God has so much plans for us, and God wants to make us happy and to make us fulfilled and to give us lives of service, lives of love. That's what the persistence of God means, my friends. God never gives up, and God always wins. I was called to the priesthood in 2001. I was ordained in 2013. For those 12 years, I had spent a whole lot of time pressing that cosmic snooze button. And just because not today, but I sometimes wear a funny shirt, doesn't make me any different than anybody else. For each of us is called by God, and each of us has a purpose and a plan that God has for us. We have to be willing, however, to buy that ticket, to make the changes in our lives, to open ourselves to the possibility that God's plan might be ever so much better for us than what we have in store. Ponder those things, my friends. Look for God's persistence in your life, and I promise you, what God has in mind will be fulfilling, will be joyful, and will be blessed. God love you. God bless you. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.